Alright, we have Reanimator player. This is Jimmy on the left looking at his hand versus Donghee on the right. Donghee is playing like a bug control list. I'm not quite sure what to call it really. It has a Thespian Stage Dark Depths package and basically every mid-range bug card ever. And then a bunch of crop rotations and a couple of life from the loams. I've seen it go off extremely quickly, but for the most part it's pretty slow. End of turn Brainstorm is a little strange for this deck to be playing. Jimmy led on Basic Island Ponder, so he hasn't really given away anything that he's up to, but I believe his hand was Petal, Iona, Careful Study, Land, maybe 2 copies of Ponders, I believe, what I could see. He does not have a way around the Deathrite yet, and it will resolve. So he found the Reanimate, but because he played Basic Island on turn 1, he's a little hampered. I mean, I guess, so he might get stifled here. If he gets stifled, then he's still okay because he has a Petal, and he's going to get in underneath this Deathrite Shaman. Unfortunately, the Iona is not lights out for a 3-colored deck. I believe what I would do here is Careful Study, try to find a better fatty than Iona. It looks like it'll just be Iona. And then because we have to get in under the Deathrite Shaman, we are going to cast Petal Reanimate. Donghee still has, every indication that he might have a Force of Will, but it is what it is. We're gonna jam here. Let's go. And that comes into play. I believe he will name Blue. It's extremely difficult for a bug deck to get rid of a huge fatty at this point. I believe I would just name Blue and beat down with the Angel until something different happens. And if I heard that correctly, I think that Jimmy just said green. So Donghee, we'll be able to tell pretty quickly here based on what he manages to cast. So I guess this opens Iona up to things like him digging for Liliana or something. But it is still a very large creature, and it could just do its work in the attack step. It's not lights out like it is against Burn or something like that. How about this time? Can I fetch this time? Jimmy's life total is very low though, because Reanimate on huge legendary is always costly. The Deathrite Shaman is going to begin on his life total very quickly here, and so he goes to what, 8 fetching or was it 9 fetching? Gets in there and puts Donghi to 12. The clock is in Jimmy's favor, but only marginally. I'd really like to ask him what he feels the reason for naming green was. And he sees, oh, Maelstrom Pulse would have actually killed the Iona. Wow, very nice, Jimmy. Green, 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 Donghi says. And since the instants and sorceries are uncastable, he correctly takes the Planeswalker out for less fuel for the death rate. Though the Thoughtseize hurting himself quite badly there. It's nice to have the information, but obviously the Thoughtseize didn't actually take a castable card, so that is unfortunate. Now this turn, Donghi gets very low, and then puts Jimmy to 3. Fetches himself to 4, and he's dead in 1 turn, so we might see one of those untap for looking for a certain card, and then a concession to the Iona. Like I said, I think game 1 it's extremely hard for him to find anything that could deal with her here. All right, here's the draw. Looks at it carefully. No, okay. So Iona is actually probably the worst fatty that Jimmy could have found, but it still barely gets there. And he did get a lot of information out of that game because he saw Nissa, Vital Force, a crop rotation, main deck Maelstrom Pulse. So a lot of this is like a shell of a mid-range bug deck with a couple of extremely spicy, weird oddballs thrown into it that Donghi just wanted to play today. As a Reanimator player myself, I would be expecting to find myself against Pithing Needle, Liliana, Diabolic Edict, Surgical Extraction for game 2. I would probably be bringing in Needles and ways to kill Deathray Shaman, and that's probably it. Maybe taking out some of my subpar reanimation targets, like if he plays Leviathan, then that's probably bad. If he plays the Iona can come out. I would like to see Grave Titan still in the deck, and Tidespout Tyrant, and all of the Grizzlebrands. Also, seeing the crop rotation, I would be really suspicious about possibly running something into a Bajuka Bog. And I also have to be wary about a Stifle. Viable Stifle targets against Reanimator, possibly the come into play ability on Animate Dead, the draw 7 on Grizzlebrand, and I think that's about it. It's also a very land-light hand, so Stifle's application in this matchup may actually just be hitting your Polluted Delta, like more often than not. So Jimmy narrowly got there with Reanimator over this bug list, which, to be honest, I don't know what to call yet. So Donghi just flashed a Liliana of the Veil while shuffling. That's going to be one of the big important parts for him to find. One thing to note here is that this isn't like a Negator 77 depths list. This is just like a bug control list that happens to have maybe 2 copies of Life from the Loam and a couple of crop rotations. That's interesting. If he doesn't even want a mana source this turn, this really leads me to believe that he's setting up for turn 3 or turn 4 Merit Lage. And Jimmy can beat that card. I mean, like a Tidespout Tyrant, like just completely beats the heck out of Merit Lage, and is one of the reasons why I love playing Blue Black Reanimator um, when we have so many lands players of various types at the store. Let's see, so he goes and grabs a Grizzlebrand. That's a nice, fine choice for a first target. Um, Interestingly, like Donghae is playing a blue deck and literally does not have an island. Except, wow, Jimmy did not play a land for the turn. He didn't even show days here. This is a interesting sequence here. It looks to me like he wanted to get there with a single force of will backing up the Reanimator, or the Reanimate. He's going to lose his copies of Grizzlebrand, whether it be 3 or 4. I'm not completely sure. There's 4 copies of Grizzlebrand in the deck. And looks like he didn't find very much in the deck to look at carefully, so he hands it back very quickly. And now the hand is Collective Brutality, Iona, Thoughtseize, Ponder. And he kept his hand without a blue source, but he ripped the island. So, from Reanimator's side of things, it sure does suck to be blown out by Surgical. But in this case, you fought a mild counterspell war over it, so we also got a force out of their hand, and we can continue playing the game. He rips a Deathrite Shaman straight off the top, and looks to me like he really doesn't have very much going on. That Dark Depths is it could represent a crop rotation at end of turn or something, but it doesn't look like it really. That Dark Depths will eventually become a Merit Lage, I do believe, but we're not terrified of it happening right now. Jimmy can untap and look for some way to reanimate. Maybe he'll just... I think he's reading Collective Brutality right now. Let's just play Collective Brutality and kill the Deathrite, and maybe look at the hand and pitch some irrelevant card.
And I'll look at your hand. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, so he can't take the Liliana. He has dealt with the Deathrite. I believe that Liliana is going to resolve if Donghi can find a land off the top.
Yeah, my life no. Force surgical 10. Force will. Ah, sorry. Okay. And I'm 18 force will. Okay.
Oh, so it's true that he had the Bajuka Bog, and even though it wasn't at instant speed here, it it did its job and it got rid of the Tide Spout. And we're settling in for a pretty slow game here because nobody has much of anything. Except if he's fetching, like, yeah, that's what I thought. He's fetching some irrelevant basic, so he can rotate it away. This is going to become a Thespian stage, and um, Jimmy does not have an out to this anymore because the Tide Spout is gone. No, 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 you had a brainstorm on the stack. Okay. So the island is tapped. He is brainstorming at the end of Doni's turn, I believe. And that's game. So I disagree with that because he had a he brainstormed into something, but it wasn't a winning line. So the fact that he untapped and drew a card that he already knew about without cracking that fetch and getting a new card means that he thought that his play was Pithing Needle when obviously Donghee is going to create a Merit Lage in response to the needle hitting the stack. The needle in the stack there. So you simply cannot keep that brainstorm there. You have to shuffle and look for a card. I don't know what that card would be because I think that you're dead. Um, but yeah, always look for an out. Maybe we all forgot about it. Maybe he sideboards a one of Caracas. I don't know. I sideboard a one of Caracas in lots of my decks. Not Reanimator, but so that game, a couple of things happened there. A couple of very hateful cards showed up, namely that Bajuka Bug right off the top. If he hadn't naturally drawn it and he had to go search for it, that would have taken care of the crop rotation, and then we wouldn't have died to a Merilage. Additionally, we saw Liliana, which is very threatening, even though it never got cast. That's a card that you can easily just lose to on its own. So that's an argument for keeping these Thoughtseizes and Pithing Needles. And I think Jimmy's hand was okay. Doni's hand was not great, really. Um, that hand kind of lost to a lot of very early, fast Reanimator shenanigans. Um, like if Jimmy had just happened to have another daze, then he would have been golden. We'll see what Jimmy can do on the play for game three. Jimmy starts off with a mull to 6. Not really what he wants to see. Donghi must be keeping here, unless he's going to announce a mulligan right before Jimmy draws again. Okay, so that means that Donghi is kept. Jimmy will keep. He will scry something to the top and play fetch go. So he thought about that scry to the top for quite a while and then played a fetch land, so I'm unsure if anything would really budge him into cracking this. And I don't think that he's playing show and tell, so if this is a turn 1 Deathrite, then just quite unfortunate. You might have to fight over that. That might be worth a force of will. I would have snapped that immediately. Tony will force back. So the Deathrite resolves. I don't know what he left on top, but he now is facing down an active Deathrite Shaman and will fetch twice. So that should be Jimmy going down to 17. So a force and 2 fetches. And he grabs himself a an Underground Sea replacement. A little. I'm unsure if it's hurt him this game or not.
Want to trade?
He he points appreciatively at the Underground Sea across the table. And Jimmy will go to 15 on a Deathrite Shaman activation. This is really where Donghi wants to be already. I mean, almost nothing has happened in this game so far, and he probably feels insanely ahead. Now we have no sorceries or instants in the graveyard. Jimmy should be at 13. I'm unsure what 2 mana instant could have been. I have not caught a good glimpse of either player's hand. That's an unfortunate aspect of the way that the camera is tilted here. I apologize for that. It looks to me like Jimmy has stepped away from the table to ask for a ruling on what I assume is collective brutality.
Okay, so I say I'm gonna cast this collective brutality.
Yeah, I think that he stepped aside and
So you have to announce it. You have to announce the votes, and he cannot respond.
I believe I gave him a ruling on collective brutality.
Okay. Sorry.
But note that I'm not an L1.
No, yes, yeah, you are.
So I think he asked
And I'll
if there was any way, like if you announce your
1, 2, 3, or no or
Yeah, so you announce your modes, you discard your cards.
아니 또 하나 둘세 개. No, you discard two and spell one and escalate one two. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
you can only escalate twice, up to twice. I think Donghi just has all the mana he could want to hardcast a force here.
Rand? This one? I rand. Oh,
Brutal. Um, so Jimmy has not been finding his dazes, and he's losing these counter wars. An Exhume here would be fine, really.
go. 이온아? 어? 이온?
The
아니오나?
first target will be
갱수?
interesting. I'm not sure if that matters all that much, but I would feel like that indicates that he wants to that he has a surgical. At least that's what he's representing. If I did not have the surgical, then I would definitely target the Grizzlebrand first. So if it's a bluff, then I think that it's pretty risky, which leads me to believe that he has that surgical. If I'm Jimmy right now, I believe that there's a surgical, and now there's also a Liliana. So I it would take quite a series of cards to get out of this one. I think Dongi is going to get there now. And there goes Grizzlebrand.
20? Yeah. Go.
His hand is good, so Liliana doesn't get activated.
Go.
Yeah.
Sure.
Snap with no target just to beat down.
Sure. Multi mentality.
And now the clock is pretty fast.
Attack? Sure. Go.
재철이 형, 재철이 형 아까 그 형, 은채 형님 째시면 3점이었어요. 메디컬한테 죽어요.
Deer?
I would be okay as the Reanimator player to just concede here. I don't really see, yeah, I don't really see a reason to continue playing in the face of this Liliana and Deathrite that I can't beat. It's true that you shouldn't scoop early, but I think that from this position, that there's no real out. So just going through the motions and drawing this next card before you scoop, to me feels sort of just like a little waste of time here.
Attack? Go.
So this should be an attack for 2.
Go. What?
Deathrite still has food. Our life total is getting super low. And I guess that was a fail to find. I'm sorry, everybody. I'm gonna cue the music.